Good morning, my dear viewers, and a very warm welcome to the Today's Woman Show, coming to you from the studios of TV3 by courtesy of BF Soap. Every woman knows what she wants, and Lydia Female Contraceptives. With Lydia, you decide. By all means, if you want to join this conversation, please go to our Facebook page, Today's Woman on TV3, or simply follow us on Twitter, hashtag Today's Woman on TV3. Now, I'm going to start off today's show by giving you a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt, who was the former First Lady of the United States of America, and it says, and I quote, "You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face. You're able to say to yourself, I lived through this horror. I can take the next thing that comes along. You must do the thing you think you cannot do." And that's her word of advice for us this morning. We're going to go for a short commercial break. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the Today's Woman Show. I'd like to acknowledge our sponsors once more. BF Soap, every woman knows what she wants. And Lydia Female Contraceptives. With Lydia, you decide. Now, time to introduce my guest. I'm sure you're wondering who she is this week. Well, she calls herself a social entrepreneur, and she's going to be telling us in a few moments what that really means. For me, it's a new phenomenon. I've never heard of it. I mean, I hadn't heard of it till recently. Her name is Eugenia Tachie-Menson, and she's Vlisco's ambassador for the year 2014. Congratulations, and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Audrey. It's good to be with you.
Well, I mean, finally, we've got you here. It's been difficult. You've been traveling a bit.
Now you're making me sound like a star.
Oh, yes, you are.
I've been working.
You're a whole ambassador.
I've been working.
Should I call you Her Excellency?
In private.
Now, tell me, why do you describe yourself as a social entrepreneur? I think I'm an entrepreneur, but I don't know what social means.
Yeah, I think a social entrepreneur, what I do really is to take a social cause and, as it were, champion it as a business. So, for instance, I promote education via educational programs and therefore literacy, and run that purely as a business. So, if, for example, UNICEF was my concept, then I am a social entrepreneur whose product or whose program is UNICEF. So it's the same concept that you are someone who is an entrepreneur, but not in it for the profit making.
Not for the money bit.
Yeah, not for the money bit.
Well, not for the profit making.
Yeah.
So it's a non-profit
yes,
organization.
It's non-profit, definitely. So
what drives you? What kicks you into doing something like that?
Well, I think that, again, I didn't start out knowing that I wanted to be a social entrepreneur. I started out knowing that I wanted to do something for kids, education-based, period. Why I wanted to do that, I've always loved being around children, and I think that the best thing my parents gave me was education and a very loving family setting. And growing up, I noticed that I'm surrounded by nieces and nephews who did not have exactly the same thing that of course they can't have the same thing that I had, but I think that I could share with them what I had in terms of education. We didn't grow up with TV as a main source of entertainment. It was reading. So we had personal libraries, and in our time, it was a fashionable thing to get your friends to come over and look at your library and go, wow, you've got Nancy Drew, you've got this.
Enid Blyton.
Yes, and it was the in thing. And I've grown to appreciate that reading really never goes out of fashion. It broadens your knowledge base. It enhances your vocabulary, makes you more confident. And I noticed that with our generation, this was something I noticed 8-10 years ago, that with this next generation of kids,
they're reading less.
And I think that to a very large extent, we, the adults, are to blame. We're not buying them books. We're buying them other things. We're buying them gadgets.
I mean, if you go out to the West or if you go into any library, you'll see that there are not that many people in libraries anymore. People don't go into libraries because, like you said, apart from having the private libraries at home, public libraries were a place to go to, especially even for people who are studying for exams. I'm off to the library. I'm going to. How many children do you hear saying they're going off to the library these days?
Well, we don't have the libraries to begin with. We don't have the physical buildings called libraries like we used to. If there are, there's not many of them. I think that libraries should be more community based and not. So you don't have to. If you live in Tema, you don't have to
come to Accra.
Accra.
Otherwise, there's no point.
There's no point.
You'll give yourself the excuse of staying at home and reading.
Yes,
and then you're not able to do what you want to do.
Yeah, So really, what has driven me, or what keeps driving me in doing what I do, is to share what I used to have that I thought is made me what I am today.
Now, your organization is Young Educators Foundation.
Yeah.
What's the ethos of that company? What are the aims, objectives? What are
we want to? Young Educators Foundation really just is looking to improve the lives of children through education, fundamentally literacy. Again, as I say, I don't come from a typical. My parents were civil servants, so we're not really rich. But because of the education and the value that they put on education, I was rubbing shoulders with kids of diplomats and foreign expats and whatever, and again, I still stand here today and I say that everything I have been able to achieve in my life has been as a result of my educational exposure. And so it tells me that education really is the leveler. Because of my education, I would be able to sit in a room with Barack.
You could match the intelligence of your guests, or whoever it is.
Yes, and go anywhere. You talk to anybody. And I can't emphasize enough the value or the place that education has in my life.
Now let's talk about the spelling bee competition that your company organizes.
Right.
Now that comes from your passion for reading, obviously.
Definitely.
Now, how did it come about?
So I was finishing communication studies in the UK, and I was sure that I wanted to come back home, and wanted to run a PR company. That's what I thought. That's what I thought. So PR is so glam out there, but fortunately for me, I kept coming home during my holidays, and I noticed that PR doesn't have that sort of place in Ghana yet. And I chanced upon the script spelling bee, which I found fascinating.
Is it a UK based or US based?
It's actually US based. So my first year in the UK when I was studying, I was there for 3 years. I chanced upon the script spelling bee and noticed that it was open to English speaking countries around the world. So I said, so why is Ghana not there? So I shot an email to them and said, we want. I'm in Ghana, and we want Ghana to be represented. Was there anything we need to do? Just fill an application. So I went, well, here we go. Well, I filled it anyway, and I forgot about it. So as I was finishing school, I thought, it did cross my mind if I got that spelling. I checked in, and there was still no response from the scripts team. So I minded my business and came down to Ghana. Worked with Charterhouse for about a year, and then after that, I moved on to a car company. Worked there for about 6 months, where I was let off. I was actually fired. The week of Christmas.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Now you have to tell us about that one, but you finished the story.
So the day I got fired was the day Script Spelling Bee wrote to me and said, we've given you the franchise.
So wasn't that a blessing in disguise?
Yeah, it is a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, I think God was just getting you. You think that it was fire.
Yeah, and He
was just getting you ready so that maybe if you're still working at the car company, you probably would have said to yourself that, oh God, this Scripts thing, I'm not going to take it seriously. But because you didn't have, an income, you were just thinking, oh God, it was a bit daunting. Yeah. Let me take this on. I might make something of it.
Definitely.
And today that's what's made that's made you right now, hasn't it?
It has. It has.
But we have to go for a commercial break. Viewers, stay with us. Welcome back to the Today's Woman Show. As always, I'd like to acknowledge our sponsors, BF Soap, Every Woman Knows What She Wants, and Lydia Female Contraceptives. With Lydia, you decide. For those of you who've just joined us, my guest in the studio is Vlisco's ambassador for 2014, Eugenia Tachie-Menson. So now tell us, Scripts, you've told us about how it got started and when you actually got it. When you saw the email or the form of communication they used to reach you, to say to you that they had agreed to try and run, or to give you the agency, I guess, for Ghana, how did you feel?
I was overwhelmed because it was the same day that I had lost a job that I thought, was going to feed me for the rest of my life.
Exactly.
So I was overwhelmed with emotions, but I was grateful because I thought that finally I was going to be able to do what I really wanted to do, which was to work with children and promote education. And so with very little resources then, I just had to rely on my network of friends at Joy FM, who gave me all the media for free to talk about it. At Tigo, Anita Eskin was then the manager, so she sponsored the program, so she gave us money to go to the US to compete. North America, basically I used friends. I just used my network of friends who I believed will believe in the program, not just believing in me, but believing in the program. It was for our kids. And really, I started the first year with not even a CD to my name, but I got the program off the ground. I think Fidelity Bank supported us as well. And we went on to the States, and it was news because no African country
had actually
till date is yes. So the news was more about the fact that Africa had made it, not so much as whether we were going to win or lose, but finally, so it was almost as though finally we see Africans
are here.
Yes.
How did we fare?
We didn't fare too well because it was our first time. This was a competition where as of the year we entered, it was in its 80th year.
80th.
So you were dealing with pros.
Yes.
So we didn't expect much, but obviously we gave it our best. But we took up the best practices from there. We realized that in order to make it there at all, we need to be teaching spelling as a subject. That's where they beat us hands down. The other thing is to read, really, and read widely and broadly. So we came back, and since then it's been
rise. As I call it, the rise and rise of Eugenia, not rise and rise of the spelling bee competition or scripts for that matter.
Well, yeah.
But what other challenges have you faced?
From raising funds for a program like this is not popular.
What does the program entail, really?
So the spelling
because you're saying you're raising funds.
Yes.
So what does it entail?
So it entails a lot of teaching. In the US, where the program is origin from, they don't need to do any teaching because, as I say, spelling is taught as a subject. But we realized that we don't have that here.
But wait a minute. I thought that growing up, was the phonics, and we were taught how to break up our words and to spell.
Yes.
So there's probably, I think maybe in our era, spelling to a certain extent was taught.
Oh,
Wouldn't
yes. Even now, some of the schools will tell you, but we teach spelling. So maybe let me explain myself better. If a child asks you why is phone spelled with a PH, starts with a PH, family with an F, but have the same sound, how do you explain that?
That's the way it is in the English dictionary.
Yes, but there's a reason.
Yeah, but I don't know what the reason is.
That's what we mean by teaching spelling.
Okay. Now that comes back to the way we teach in Ghana, which is the rote system.
Yes.
No,
the spelling does have a bit of rote teaching to it, but I would say maybe it makes up for maybe 30-40% really, but the core is understanding,
which is what it has to be.
Yes, the core is understanding.
Chew, pass, pour, forget,
because
Isn't
you
that
cannot.
what we do?
Yeah, the spelling bee Bible, the dictionary is what we call it, has over 465,000 words. No one person is going to be able to learn all those words. Even if you are able to learn how they're spelled, you may not be able to pronounce them correctly. That's the other challenge we have as Ghanaians. Mnemonic, for example, was a word that beat us. We spelt it without the P.
I've always spelt it with a P-N.
But that's because...
maybe I've seen it somewhere.
Yes, but for the child who's entering the spelling bee for the first time...
Pneumonia.
But it was even not pneumonia. And that's the thing, linking word roots. So if you're hearing mnemonic, it's got to have pneumonia in there. The meaning or the origin will be related. And that's what we teach during our spelling bee.
So are you teaching that as a subject? You're doing that?
We're
Is that
teaching
part of the things that you have to do?
So what we do is when a school enrolls, we take your best students off of you, 5 of them at most, and train them. because in the past we used to allow the schools to do it, but the schools are focused, and I'm not saying this in any negative way, but these are their words. They're focused on passing their exams.
That's all we want.
Well,
that this it brings to what I always say. I think that our focus here is about academic excellence. We're not looking at actually producing children who have various talents, but we're just focusing that it has to be the AAA, and if you don't get that AAA, then you're not worthy. Literally, and I think for me, it's one of the things that when you have average children, you find that there's so much pressure on them to perform, because if you don't perform, then you're not part of the A group, or so to speak, and that's actually wrong, because when you look at life in itself, those who got A's when you were growing up in the classroom are probably nowhere to be found. You know what I mean? So it's probably, I guess maybe with you've got to start bringing people round to thinking that let's get the best out of the children, and whatever their best is.
And Audrey, the sad part is the children get it, that winning is not everything. It's we, the adults, who make them feel bad when they don't win. I couldn't agree with you more that I don't think the schools must be necessarily focused on
just their performance,
academic excellence, because, and I say this with all due respect, even if we're getting the strong A's, are we making it internationally? Do we clock it? Are we clocked internationally that, wow, that student who got 4 A's from...
Ghanaian. But recently, not that he was not Ghanaian trained. I think there are 2 children going into colleges who got all the top 10 Ivy Leagues. They were brought up in the US.
In a system which accepts programs such as this. In our system rejects programs. We see them as distractions. Schools have actually labeled the spelling bee as a distraction, so we don't want it in our school. Yes, we get that. But we keep telling them, if you look beyond the competition and look at what we're teaching your children, they're learning things like how to lose gracefully, for example, how to speak up in public, how to be assertive,
which are all elements that make a whole person,
which can never be taught to a human being. The only way is the experience. And yet somehow we expect that when we go to the US we must win. If we don't change it in Ghana, it's going to be difficult.
Now, would you say that your exposure in the UK brought your mindset to this?
I would say that exposure has a lot to do with it, but not that late in life. Our parents exposed us to the Western concept of life quite early, because they were both diplomats at the time. So we tended to interact with families from
international,
yes, and so I think that sort of made us open-minded as we were growing up. But I also think that exposure in this 21st century is not limited to traveling. So we have access to the internet, and so you could travel to the Netherlands
via your internet,
or a storybook.
Or a storybook, is what I say sometimes. Stretch your imagination.
Dream. There are lots of countries we haven't been to, but by reading, the currency they use, the measurement systems that they use. Before I ever went to the UK, because I read British books, I could identify with, when I got to the UK, I could identify with some of the things that they were talking about. So I think that exposure definitely is critical, but we must not think exposure is limited to traveling physically or going onto even if you don't have the internet or you don't have the travel experience, you have a book. And that's why for us literacy is a big deal. Unfortunately, we tend to make excuses for why we're not making it, and so we've got all it takes. We need to just try and harness the best out of it. I mean, our education system is not that bad. It is. I think it's how it's been implemented. So, as I say, we don't need to call it spelling. Some people call it dictation. If that's what works for you, fine.
But dictation is different from spelling.
Of course, you're being dictated too.
And
but Ghanaians are caught on to phrases, so I'm not going to force you to say, but change it to spelling. You call it dictation, but teach my spelling. and they say I'm dictating, so I'm telling you to spell this word, because obviously, as you say, in dictation, you're just being dictated. So you write what I ask you, or you say back to me what I say to you.
Do the schools still do dictation?
Oh yeah,
they do.
Yeah.
Oh,
the public schools.
They
I
do?
work with a lot of them. Yeah, they do dictation. Early morning dictations. And so, for example, I say, so if you ask the child to spell C and they wrote one C you didn't think they should, do you spank them? How do you blame them for getting the wrong one? Without asking questions. And that's where our type of spelling competition comes in, that we encourage the children to ask questions, because there are homophones, or again, if you bring it to life, not everything is black and white. So you don't want to, when you're listening to someone and they're speaking to you and saying, I think this person is a bad person, you want to ask, why do you say so? As opposed to, oh really, they are bad, okay, I made up my mind about them.
And you're staying away from this, so you want an open mind, to keep an open mind.
And our program, the spelling bee is our flagship. We have 2 other programs, Science and Technology Fair and the Young Debaters. They're quite quiet because they're fairly new. And then again, spelling bee is literacy, so it really pushes us. But for all our programs, we also are we use them to also get our children to know each other at a young age. We mingle them up, and we are talking private and public schools. We want for private children to see what public school
is on the
kids,
other side.
Yes, and vice versa. Because a lot of children from public schools think all private school kids are snobbish, and so our programs have a residential aspect of it, where we bring them together, and everybody is stripped to their barest minimum. Bring your shoes, your clothes, and books. That's it. That's no mobile phones, no cameras, nothing. That's beautiful. Because really, when it comes to the core, that's what we are. Without our gadgets, we're only human. And I got blood in me, you've got blood in you. So let's deal.
Welcome back to the Today's Women Show. Today's Women Show is brought to you by courtesy of BF Soap, Every Woman Knows What She Wants, and Lydia Female Contraceptives, with Lydia Ugie Side. So now, I said, how did a lady who's so passionate about literacy, how did you start your career in the media?
Well, so I was doing my national service then, after sixth form, and I was posted to Tachie-Menson, which is another Tachie-Praso district. Okay. And I actually chose Central Region because I didn't want to be in Accra. I want to be away from my parents. It's too much. I wanted some independence, or so I thought. So I went as far away as possible, and my mom is from the Central Region. So. Okay. So I was a teacher. I was teaching English. Oh, that's what I preferred. My neighbor was a cobbler who would have to fix my shoes every day because it was a very stony area. And whenever I engaged him, I noticed he spoke relatively good English. And he was out of school. So I asked him, so what's your story? So basically, he was an orphan who had finished his BECs the year before, had straight ones in 8 subjects, but no money, and he was further his education, and he was caring for his blind grandmother as well. Wow. And I thought, no, you've got to go to school. I mean, I hadn't finished school then, but I was like, I've been privileged enough to come this far. And I think, and he wanted to go to Infantsbom school. That was my dad's school. So I said, I'll do whatever I can to help. So then Joy FM had just started. I had head off, and so I left Tachie-Menson with my sleepover bag, came to Accra, walked into Joy FM and said, I have a story and I want you to listen. Oh, you're joking. That's what I did. I didn't know anybody there. I was in National Service 24, 25. You are joking. 24, maybe 24, yeah. So just walked in there and said, this is my story and you will listen. So it was Tommy Annan Forson then who listened and said, it's interesting. So they put me on the show the next morning, and I spoke about the boy's story. And within 5 minutes, someone had taken up his... Infantsbom had offered to give him a place. Someone had taken up his fees for 3 years. Someone had taken care of his allowances. Basically, he was taken care of. So I grabbed my bag on my way back to Himain because I had asked for only 3 days away. And the business development manager at Joy FM then was Maxwell Ansah, called me into his office on my way out and said, I think I like your voice. I think I'd like you to do radio. Just like that. I didn't walk into Joy FM looking for a job, but I walked out with a job.
You were joking.
So I walked back, so basically after your national service, you've got a job waiting for you, is what he said. So I went back to a national service, finished up, and came back to Accra.
So you went into radio green
as ever. Green as ever. So I did a bit of reading of announcements, news, disc jockeying for a bit. Finally settled on events and promotions. Events and promotions desk was created with me to begin with. I like events. I'm excited about
which is what I mean. When I finally saw you doing the spelling, I was like, isn't she into events, that sort of thing? Because after Joy FM, you went on to work for Charter House,
yes,
which is sort of within the whole
same concept,
sort of concept of things.
At Joy FM, I started the
bridal fair is the one that I was so surprised to find out.
Yes, I started the bridal fair. And I'm happy to say it's a legacy.
It's grown, yes, the legacy. But we have a surprise on the line for you.
No, you do not.
Yes, we do. This is the Today's Woman Show. We can do anything we want to do.
Who is this?
Good morning. Hello. Hello, Nanaba. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Very well, thank you.
I've got a lady in the studio, and we wanted to find out. We have Eugenia Tachie-Menson in the studio.
Okay.
And I know you know Eugenia quite well.
Yes.
She's laughing. How did you meet Eugenia?
I'm going to kill her.
It's amazing. Eugenia, I've admired her from afar for a very long time. Very hardworking. She chose a path that for a long time many people hadn't paid attention to. This spelling bee project she undertook, very ambitious. At some point, I was wondering how she could sustain it, but she proved to everybody that, it's possible to start something very little and make it very huge. So from afar, I admired her so much. And the first time I met her, really, to talk to her one-on-one was when she appeared on my show. And my, oh my, I was blown away. Very intelligent, very focused, very jovial as well. A very modern lady, and I'm just very proud of her.
Very confident.
Yeah, extremely confident.
Extremely confident, very astute lady. Yeah. Okay, so she's sitting and she's shaking her head and she says she's going to kill you. But what? do you have any fond memories? Do you have any fond memories you want to share with us?
I think it was one time, I saw her walking into TV3 with a tape for spelling bee. And I saw her running from gate 1 to the TV3 studio. I think her program was running late, and she was running like a headless chicken. And I heard Sandov scream that we're going to take your program off air, And she looked like she was torn between crying and also abusing the man who said we were going to take your show off air. So I was just sitting aside, just watching her. I was wondering how she was going to cope with the attitude from the other gentleman. But she behaved like a lady, She took it in good faith, and she just, calmly said, I am sorry. Somebody who was paying TV3 for airtime would have just said, look, you can just go away. I'm taking my program to another station. But she apologized like a real lady should do and accepted that, okay, I made a mistake. I'm late for the tape, But finally, I'm here. Can we move on? And I was just looking at Mr. Shandov. He was just smiling like a kid who's just been given a candy. I was just, I was really impressed.
Oh, Nanaba, thank you so much for accepting to give her a contribution. But what would you like to say to her that you haven't said to her before?
Eugenia, I just want to tell you that I'm very, very proud of you. I'm happy that you are teaching children so much. I know that the reading culture in this country is waning, but through Spelling Bee, another project you've been undertaking for children. There's a lot of interest now, and you're helping a lot of children. I know my son, for instance, is very crazy about the Spelling Bee. He didn't used to love spelling, but these days he makes a very conscious effort. He imagines himself, in a Spelling Bee contest. So from the point of view of my son and me as a mother, we're very proud of you, and I'm sure you are affecting several homes positively as well.
Thank you, Nanaba. But I'm going to get you to come on a separate note altogether, to come and join us here on the Today's Women set, because you need to educate me on football. I totally don't know anything about football. Corner kicks, whatever, penalties, whatever, you need to come in so we can talk about, especially.
You have to be on the Diva show. You're a diva yourself.
Hey, man, I'm not a diva at all, my darling. Let's talk off air, okay? Thank you so much. Thank you so much, my dear. All right, then. Bye. Well, so there you go. You have so many admirers, but
that wasn't a surprise. Yeah. That was a shock.
I want us now to talk a bit about your childhood. You seem to speak so fondly about it, but you were raised by obviously two loving parents.
Yeah.
And you have two brothers, the only girl.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that makes you a real tomboy. And you're in the middle. Yeah. Older brother, younger brother.
Yeah.
How did you relate to the boys?
We got on very well, I must say. I didn't get on well with girls.
You didn't?
No. Because they just found me too
opinionated or
too aggressive, strong-headed, and not very feminine.
So you were not into dolls and things like that?
No. I would rip their heads apart and melt them in fire.
Oh, you're joking?
Yeah. I just couldn't be bothered with baby dolls.
And now today you have a daughter. What's she like?
Just like me. Tomboy in the making. Tomboy in the making. But so as I say, I didn't have too many female friends. I had more male friends. I got on better with boys. I think my brothers didn't help. They're to blame. But it was great. And so there's just this one friend who's actually, we are finding out years later that we're actually related. Only one who has been there all this while, since we discovered each other since we were 10 years old.
Oh, wow. And you've only just discovered
we recently discovered we're related.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes, so...
But did your brothers have anything to say, especially your older brother, about your boyfriends or anything when you came home?
Yeah.
They did?
Oh, yeah, he will not have any of that. My younger brother would, though, because he was getting the tips and he liked it. My older brother, you can't buy him. Like, no, who's that? Where are you going? And again, because I didn't have a lot of female friends, I didn't have decoys. Like, I'm going to Esther's house. Who's Esther? We don't know. Esther's never been to your house. So, it was difficult. It was difficult in that sense. But it was fun. I think that growing up with boys can toughen you up.
It definitely does.
It toughens you up because... they would taunt me till they used to taunt me. I have big ears, big nose, big forehead. So you really felt like an ugly duckling. You really felt like an ugly duckling. But I grew up to understand that was the way boys were really. They're not.
And you got to defend yourself.
Yes,
and that's why now you can be who you are.
Yes, and I also think that it also helps you. So it toughens you up in the sense where. I'm relating to it now, and sponsors say no to me, and I just say next. Let's move on to the next person. I'm not going to sit there and lose sleep and God, why did they? Let's just move. Who's next? And I always have a plan B. What if they say they're not coming back?
I think in that regard, you're like me. I always tell people that if there's a mountain in front of me, it's by the side, under it, over it, through it. I mean,
find a way.
You've got to find a way.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think mine's not because I grew up with boys, but just generally life just makes you like that, and you've got to really, you've got to decide that you're going for it. Yes. Like we read earlier about failure. If you decide that someone says no, so you're going to go back home, throw the blankets over your head and say, oh God, what am I going to do? You're never going to get the work done.
Never.
But when someone says failure, it could be says no, it could be a blessing in disguise.
9 out of 10 times it is.
A blessing in disguise. So you've just got to take it and say, okay, so what's my next option? Plan B. Let me go on to plan B.
Yeah, and that's what's brought me this far, I must be honest with you. Failure is part of life. And I have learned, some alliances I almost made with this program, that I have had to be the unpleasant person to say I'm walking out or I'm pulling out, and I'm looking down years on us, and I'm seeing those partners and how they're not going the direction I would have wanted them to go.
You see that it was a blessing,
and I see it was a blessing, because they were approaching us with so much money, but money has never been the reason I work.
Okay.
Money is never.
It's been a passion.
It's
a passion. And it's always like, I always tell people that it's passion first.
Yes.
Money comes later.
Yes.
It's always about doing the passion.
Yes.
The money will come from the recognition and everything else. But today we see you as Vlisco's ambassador. I'm very proud of you, because it was indeed stiff competition. And to hear that Anita helped you along your journey, and yet she was you're competing against her.
And get this. Anita, when I was working at Joy FM, was a student at GIS, and there was a Valentine promotion where I needed someone to serenade the couples. And I said I wanted a wild voice, and someone said I've got the right person, and brought Anita Eskin.
And then later on you meet Anita Eskin, and then you stand on the stage and compete against her.
Yeah. That's not fair.
It wasn't. But you didn't care, did you now?
I didn't have a choice.
But how did you feel when your name was announced? Because it was done, the voting was done by text.
Yes.
So you don't really know those who voted.
It was text and online.
All kinds
of people had an inkling. Those who were voting could tell, because when you vote, it tells you how many votes you have. So people would just tell you, I saw you had X number of votes, and I got to a point I said I'm not interested anymore.
But when they asked you to join, I mean that you were nominated, when you're nominated, how did you feel?
I for a second, and I don't mean for it to sound as a cliche, I thought they got the wrong person.
You're joking.
No, because here I was. And it was a song I've been singing that Ghanaians don't believe in education, because that was the experience I had firsthand. So I thought, who in their normal minds, my name? Because there are other Eugenias and there are other Tachie-Mensons. You're sure you've got the
right one?
And Pascarina said, yeah, it's you. You do the spelling bee. It's you. It took me about a month before I told my family, because I wanted to be sure. I didn't want it. It is me, really. They could have made a mistake and come back and say it's not you, and that would be an anticlimax. And I could handle it, but maybe my family couldn't. So I kept it for a week until I got, a month. Until I got the letter that they had promised to send me, and then I told my family, and it started sinking in. I thought, wow. So I started communicating with all those who had helped me. So the scripts team, for example, because I was like, wow, without you guys. And then I started thinking, but I think more importantly, it's the children of Ghana who brought me this far. If they didn't want the program,
it wouldn't be, because now it's nationwide.
Because the adults don't want it, that's for sure. They don't want it. It's the kids who keep having it come back. So I owe it to them. And then it dawned on me that, wow, I have been mistaken. Ghanaians do care about education. I just hadn't noticed it in the right way. And so for me, just the nomination was
enough.
It was enough. It was enough.
I know, just to have been acknowledged.
Yes.
Acknowledged.
Yes.
So as ambassador, what do you get to do?
Well,
apart from wear all their nice fabric,
which is a big deal, you get to, as a social entrepreneur, I also have projects dear to my heart, which I'm going to work with Vlisco on. But more importantly, from the Vlisco angle, it's to promote their brand and also to talk about anti-piracy. So explain why we should be doing more of the Vlisco brand and not the pirated ones that come in. They may be cheaper.
Let's just say the ones made in China.
Okay.
Yes.
Because it's not always about the fact that it's cheaper, but what is it costing the nation? By doing that, you're depriving a lot of people of work really,
the livelihoods.
Yes. And if I mean, with what I do, if someone was doing a fake version of it, it will kill me, and because it will be cheaper and it will kill the business. So in that same light, you would want to think the same ways that go for the real thing, get the real thing. And so that's the sort of thing that we'll be doing within the year, and some charity projects as well.
Okay, so how does that tie in with what you're doing as well?
Perfect, because I have children at heart. I have mothers. Children and mothers are big for me. They're very big for me. And one of the charities that I'm looking to work with, I shouldn't have done this, but I'm going to do that on this show because they don't know yet. Little Big Souls. Little Big Souls is a charity that is dedicated to preemies, premature babies. And a friend of mine, Renee Q, invited me to, I think, the ball last year, and I was so touched. And so when I won, I tend not to wear these bands, but they're the only ones that I'm wearing.
Well, it matches beautifully with
yes,
what
doesn't it?
This is color coordinated.
Do you know, it wasn't planned though.
You know? It wasn't, you sure? No, but for, what are your projections for the next 5 years?
The next 5 years, we must be Africa. Young Educators Foundation, with our programs, especially the Spelling Bee, is going to go continental. I mean, as I speak with you, we've held the first Spelling Bee in Nigeria.
Congratulations.
Thank
well
you.
Done. Well
Thank
done.
you.
As the Nigerian man would say, well done. Well done.
Yes. But let me just add that it's their pronunciation that is we find a challenge, but they're better at spelling it than we are.
Really? I remember when I was, two things. When I was in school in England, I had some Nigerian classmates, and they would say, look at this girl, she says 13, 14, and she would laugh at me, and I was so offended. 13, these people would say 13, 14. Yeah, 13, 14, and it was just, and then recently, a friend of mine, he says to me, can you spell H-E-R? And I said, can you pronounce H-E-R? And I said, hair. And he says, and pronounce H-A-I-R, hair. So he says, hair. You know, it was just this sort of thing, you know, where we think that they think we don't speak English, and they think we don't speak English as well. But look at them; they're better at spelling than we are.
They're better at spelling. They're better at diction. They have a richer vocabulary than we do. They use proverbs a lot. And they speak their language very well.
Yes.
So when your local language is strong, when you speak it very well, it influences. It has a direct positive impact on your English speaking, because you don't do a lot of direct. What's the word I use for it? You know, the translation we do, the direct. So literal translation. Thank you. You don't do a lot of literal translations. You rather take the import of what is meant in the local proverb.
And bring it out in the...
Yes.
Okay.
It's when you are very fluent in your local language that you can do that.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
Otherwise, you do the literal translation. Sometimes that's not right.
Yes, and it loses its
totally
import.
exactly.
Normally, it's the import. Our proverbs have more import than just on the surface meaning.
They're very traditional people.
Yes.
They're very Nigerians
are. And so that's what we noticed, that they're better spellers. They would. So for example, one of the kids children was asked to spell. What's the word? It's skipping me. But let's say hair. You know, or no hair. They wouldn't have had a problem with. Let's say they were asked to spell torn. That was the word. The word was torn, and we were so sure they would get it wrong.
And she got it right.
She got it right because she asked the right question. What does it mean? Past tense of tear.
Oh,
and
so
then
you're allowed to. Otherwise, she would have spelled it as T-A-W-N or what?
She would have spelled it T-U-R-N.
Oh.
Because that's how they pronounce T-U-R-N.
Torn. Oh. Gosh, we're learning so much here, Eugenia. We've run out of time. I mean, this conversation could go on and on and on. It's been a real pleasure having you. I'm honored. You know, I'm truly honored that I've got you here, because I said, we must get her on the set, you know. Flisco's ambassador, apart from everything, you know. Yeah. But finally you're here, and it's been a pleasure. So we wish you from the team here, we wish you the very best in the future. We can't let you go without giving you one of our little sculptures. So this is for you.
Thank
to remember your time here.
And to try and lose weight and be like that.
Oh, come. No one said anything about your weight. It's you who's talking about it. Women and weight issues.
I know.
I'm not going there with you today.
Thank you.
You're most welcome.
So much. This is going to sit on my... It's got my name on it.
Of course it has your name.
And it was spelled right.
And it was... you see?
Oh, my goodness.
Why people sometimes do the Tachie as T-A-K... T-E, okay.
I get the T-E.
You get the T-E.
And then I get Mensa.
It's the Menson. Okay, so then you know, there she is, the English teacher. So anyway,
Thank you.
You're most
Thank
welcome,
you
my dear.
so
You're most
much.
welcome.